She has 10 years of experience in South Africa legal and short-term insurance industry, and she has a diverse portfolio, both local and international. Mukondeleli, please join me on the podium and take the stage.
A very good morning, everyone. Are we all well? Are we? It's quite intimidating standing up here, especially if I'm not getting many responses. Are we all well this morning? Don't worry, I'm not going to stand up here and try to sell you insurance. However, I am hoping that by the time I'm done, you'll want to get insured, and along the way, I'll drop a few hints as to why you should maybe consider getting that insurance with Allianz Commercial. But do not worry, I am not here to sell you insurance. I need my clicker. I am not seeing it. Oh, there it is. Okay, is my mic on? So the first thing I'm going to speak on, I'm going to chat to you about a couple of things, and really the topic is risk transfer as a tool in cyber risk mitigation, cushioning the blow through cyber insurance. I think it was Dr. Sylvia earlier on who mentioned how it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So cyber insurance is really just one of those things that is no longer an option. So the first thing I'm going to do is to take you through just a couple of trends that we have noticed as a global insurer across the globe. What is it that's happening in the cyber space, and how insurance actually steps in to assist. Is that okay? So the first thing that I'm going to speak on is the current cyber threat landscape. So we have an annual cybersecurity resilience report, which came out 2 weeks ago. And one of the things that this report actually stipulates is that the frequency of large cyber claims, those over 1 million euros, increased by 14% in the first half of this year, and that the severity increased by 17%. So I think that in itself is quite a spike. So we can then see that the situation is not getting better, it's getting worse, and really it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. One of the things that we have noticed is that the main drivers for the spike in cyber claims on our end really is data breaches and ransomware attacks. So I know that we have a lot of experts in the room as far as the cyber space is concerned. So I'm not going to delve into the technicalities. I will, however, just give you a high-level overview of these two drivers. So apart from our cybersecurity resilience report, we also have an annual risk barometer that we do. I just said annually, yes. It's an annual risk barometer that we send out. It's actually currently running at the moment. What we do is we send a couple of questions out to business owners, senior management, and we ask them questions such as, what are your biggest fears at the moment? So for instance, this year, in our 2024 risk barometer, the result was that cyber attacks are top of mind when people, are thinking about what it is that could really affect their businesses in an adverse manner. Second to that was business interruption, and you'll see later on how the two actually marry. So there are two notable trends that we see driving the increase in data breach. The first is that cyber criminals are increasingly targeting personal data. The second thing that we see is that there's been a significant rise in non-attack data privacy related litigation. And then on the ransomware attack side, I think there's really a lot that we know in that regard, because it is a field that is buzzing. Some of the things that we've seen there is the fact that ransomware attacks are continuing to be a significant threat. The second thing, and I think it was, I'm not too sure if it was Kuda Kwashe who mentioned it or if it was Dr. Sylvia, who mentioned the ransomware as a service kits. I think it was actually Kudakwashe who mentioned them, to say that even the non-skilled or lesser skilled cyber criminals are now able to develop their own sort of ransomware, and it is because of these ransomware as a service kits. They have made it easy, and I mean, they're not very expensive. There are also there are arrangements that can be concluded with the service providers of these ransomware as a service kits, where I can say, you know, I don't have the money now to actually pay for the kit. However, you know, once I've launched my attack and I've been successful in actually getting a ransom paid, I'm going to share some of the money with you. So I think we can just see how that would then, you know, drive up the threat. Another thing that we've noticed, that we've noted in our report, which is, by the way, available on our website if anybody is interested. One of the things that we've noticed is that high-risk sectors include healthcare, finance, and critical infrastructure. And it's really because of the type of data that these sectors store. I mean, if you just look at the healthcare industry, I mean, people's personal medical records, those are extremely valuable on the black market. So it would make them a target. And also the fact that if the healthcare industry is under attack, then, you know, things could go horribly wrong. So experience has shown that companies in the healthcare sector are more likely to pay a ransom, and that unfortunately makes them a target. The second thing that I want to chat to you about is, once again, to just emphasize how important insurance is to really just highlight some of the potential losses that companies tend to face when there has been a cyber attack. The first is really just the costs associated with IT forensic investigations. The second is data recovery and system restoration costs, which are not cheap at all. I mean, they're in the millions. The third is lost revenue due to operational downtime. Not only are companies losing revenue when they're on downtime, but their staff members, you know, are still expecting to be paid. And in fact, you find that once the system is up and running, you need to be paying people overtime because they're now playing catch up. The fourth thing is really just penalties for failing to meet their contractual obligations. Those are just some of the other costs. The fifth is regulatory fines. And the last one would be costs associated with the ransom payment if it is made. And one of the questions that we normally get when we have a presentation like this is it okay, you know, to pay ransoms? Is the paying of ransoms not illegal? Does it not then, are we then not promoting, you know, cyber attacks by aiding these criminals? And the answer that we normally give is that, yes, it may come across as though it's unethical, but I think once you've been in that position where you are losing millions by the hour, you know, then it's very difficult to understand why a company would pay a ransom. So it really does, in that regard, depend on the jurisdiction, the area where the attack has occurred. That sort of determines whether or not, you know, a ransom can be paid in that space. As Lucian correctly pointed out, in South Africa, there's really no law that prohibits us from paying ransoms. If nothing else, it's more of a PR issue. Which is why some companies are very reluctant to disclose when they've paid a ransom. But let me now not delve into spaces that I wasn't called here to delve into. Let me move right along with my presentation. The next thing that I'm going to go through this very quickly, because as I said, we have experts in the room who deal with this kind of thing on a daily basis. But just some of the trends that we have picked up is that in order to mitigate cyber attacks, the consequences that come with cyber attacks, proactive measures are essential. And the first thing that we have seen to be an absolute winner is early detection. So the thing about early detection is that it's going to, minimize both the financial and the reputational impact of the cyber attack. Another thing that early detection assists with is that it allows us to very quickly isolate the impacted systems and deal with those. And then also, Kudakwashe mentioned these AI detection tools. They are an absolute winner as well. They really assist in early detection and containing the problem sooner than we would have if we did not have them. According to our report, the report I mentioned earlier, we noticed that organizations that deployed cybersecurity AI and AI automation tools actually reduced the cost of a data breach by around $2 million on average. That is quite a significant amount. It's a significant amount to save by just simply being proactive. And to me, it really just speaks to the saying, when they say prevention is better than cure. Another thing that we noticed and noted in our 2023 risk barometer was the fact that companies that were actually proactive saved up to 1,000% when attacked. And I mean, that in itself is really quite significant. The second thing that is very important is swift action. Once there's been an attack, yes, we can take a few moments to panic about it, but it's very important that we act very quickly. And even on that, preparation is key. If we are not well prepared, then we're not going to be able to implement measures quickly enough to minimize the impact of the cyber attack. The third thing, which is why I am standing here, is cyber insurance. Excuse me if I just, even blush a bit. I'm really passionate about insurance. I mean, I've been in the industry now for, close to 10 years. And I love this industry because of what we're able to do, especially the short-term insurance industry. It's not just about selling insurance, but it's really about saving businesses that people have poured their lives into. It's about saving jobs. It's about coming in when people think, what now? And saying, you know what, we're here for you. So I really am passionate about this. So if we look at, for instance, on the insurance side, insurance will provide financial coverage for various costs associated with data breaches. Not only that, but I'll touch on this a little later as well, but as insurers, we provide valuable advice on loss prevention and mitigation. So even before something goes wrong, as insurers, we say to you, have you looked at this? Have you looked at that? Have you maybe considered getting such and such a measure in place? Another thing that we do is that we really just provide support and resources, including access to experts in the field. And then I'll go later deeper into the kind of cover that we provide. But for the moment, I'd just like to mention that we cover costs related to reputational management. For instance, when the gentleman at the back asked about the ransom payments, I immediately just thought that is a major PR issue. And one of the first things that kind of company would need is for a PR team to come on board and say this, don't say this. This is going to affect trust. This is going to help build trust. So we would come in and assist with those costs associated with that kind of management. Am I still good for time, Dr. Sylvia? Okay. And then, so really just helping companies to manage the public relations fallout from something like this having happened. The next thing that I just want to take you through is what our policy typically looks like. So you'll see there are numerous covers. I'm not going to go through all of them individually. However, the key sort of covers that are normally included, and before I go into that, I just want to mention that it wouldn't be every client that selects each and every sort of cover that is offered. However, in conjunction with your broker, you would look at the nature of your business and the kind of cover that is suitable to you. So literally, let's just, if you look at the proposal form, for instance, it would have little blocks there where you can tick, oh, I'd like this, I'd like that, that I don't really need. And that would obviously then have a bearing on things such as your, your premium and things like that. So key inclusions, as far as coverage is concerned, is normally the data breach response. That is very, very critical, because that's when something has gone wrong. You phone us in a panic, and I mean, our phones are on 24/7. You can literally, in the middle of the night, call me and say to me, MK, something has happened, what now? And then we immediately get up and we appoint whoever needs to be appointed in order to assist you. That is something that companies deem as being very, very important, because as they say, the first 24 hours are very critical when something like this has happened. Another thing is business interruption coverage. Earlier on, I spoke about some of the costs that companies can incur when something like this has gone wrong. Staff having to be paid extra hours, equipment that was maybe hired, having to be hired for a little bit longer. I mean, there's a mountain of things that could possibly go wrong in this regard. So a lot of companies will want to have the business interruption coverage. The next one is the cyber extortion coverage. I think that is self-explanatory. And the fourth thing really that a lot of companies do deem as essential is the legal expense coverage. And that will also cover you such as things as if people's personal information is now in the public domain, they may want to sue you for that. We will step in to provide the necessary support. So if you look at my little table here, I've just set out that we have third-party liability. That just highlights really the covers in respect of where you would have to pay a third party some sort of compensation because of what has occurred. The first party loss is where you have now, the business has now personally suffered, financial losses as a result of the cyber attack. You'll see top of that list is business interruption cover loss. So that's first party loss. And then the third is crisis management, which I touched on earlier when speaking about the PR costs associated with PR. The claims process, which is where I feature. I'm a complex claims handler at Allianz. I didn't mention it earlier, but I deal with mainly liability, financial lines, and cyber claims. So I just want to take you very quickly through what would happen in the event of a cyber attack, what we would do. And you'll see that my points, I realized it when I was sitting earlier, and I thought, point 2 actually should have been point 1. It makes more sense for it to be set out that way. However, let's just proceed. So the first thing that we would do is coordinate. When you phone us and you say, let's say your secretary phones you at 7 a.m., because you know how secretaries love to be super early, hey? I don't know where you work, but we just find that the secretary is always the first person there, even at 6:30 in the morning. She tries to log in, and then all of a sudden there's a rabbit doing its thing, right? Everybody is in a panic, and you phone us. The first thing that we would do is to coordinate with our incident response team, which includes attorneys, IT forensic experts. It would be the PR people as well. So literally it could be any time of the day. Everybody just comes on board and starts talking about your issue and how best we can assist you in moving forward. Another thing, before we even do that, we would coordinate with you to implement containment measures. So we'd identify the problem, where is it stemming from, how can we contain this, just because sometimes it's just the gift that keeps on giving. It just keeps getting worse. But so the first thing that our experts will do is to try and identify where the breach stemmed from. I've got 5 minutes left. Okay, I'm going to try to use it to the best of my ability. So as far as the claims process is concerned, we would really just come in to assist with those kind of things. So in essence, without me delving into too much detail, this process is just designed in such a way that companies know that they're not alone. Anybody who needs to come on board to assist you will come on board. And then a very important note at the bottom, you'll see I've written there, once the incident has been resolved and the claims settled, Allianz may conduct a post-incident review to identify lessons learned and recommend improvements to the insured's cybersecurity system. So it's an ongoing relationship, and we just keep working with you in order to ensure that this kind of thing doesn't happen again, or if it does, that it's not as bad as the previous one. Because in as much as we are there to pay claims, we're really just there to ensure continuity in the insured's business, and to ensure that everything goes as it should. And then the last thing that I'm going to speak about is securing the cover. So I'm hoping that you are sitting in your seats right now thinking, where do I sign up, And, and really, I would love to say, I've got a couple of forms with me and I can assist you, but unfortunately, that is not how the process works, right? The first thing that I wanted to touch on here is just key things that our underwriters would look at when deciding whether or not your company is insurable. Because there are some companies that are unfortunately not insurable because they don't care, and they don't want to implement any measures. It's just, you're the insurers and you're there to pay claims, do your thing. So some of the things that our underwriters would look at is an organization's data governance standards. The next thing that we'd look at is transparency regarding the use of consumer data. That's also where regulations come in. Another thing that we'd look at is the cybersecurity measures that the company currently has in place. If there's nothing in place and you're in a position where you would be deemed uninsurable, then we can work with you to get you to a point where we say, you know what, this is actually a risk that we are willing to assume. And then another very important point, and I don't know whether I'm going to be misquoting you, Koketso, but I think you mentioned something about contracts, who we're doing business with. Another thing that we will actually look at is the cybersecurity measures that are in place within the insured entity, the prospective insured's supply chain. So the people you doing business with, who are they? What sort of measures do they have in place? Which countries are they based in? Those are just a number of things that we will look at. And then to take us back to the part where we all want to sign up, in order to get cyber insurance, unfortunately, you can't approach the insurer directly. You do need to go through a broker. But I would like to emphasize that it needs to be an experienced broker. You don't want to go to a broker who specializes in agricultural placements for cyber cover, because they will not be able to advise you on the type of insurance that you need. So I just want to take a minute to take you through the benefits of finding an experienced broker. Yes, it may cost you a little bit more, but in the long run, it's definitely going to be worth it, because the broker is going to do the following things for you. So an experienced broker will explain complex insurance terms and conditions, ensuring you understand what is covered and what is not covered. Sometimes you find that there are exclusions in the policy. For instance, I was having a chat with Dr. Sylvia the other day, saying some people will say, oh, I have a commercial crimes policy. Surely that covers cyber claims. Well, we do not know until your broker has actually interrogated the nature of the policy and told you whether or not there is an extension for cyber-related incidents, or even an exclusion in respect of cyber-related instances. Another thing that the broker will do is to assess your specific business needs and recommend policies that provide the most appropriate coverage for you. The third thing is that they will help us as insurers to even tailor a policy that is suitable for the specific needs of your business. They'll also conduct thorough risk assessments in order to ensure that at the end of the day, the cover you get is the cover that you need. I think my time is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, MK. We really appreciate the presentation. Any questions? Okay, yes. Question over here. I think while the mic is going there, is it that some companies are not insurable because by design insurance don't want to pay out, so they want people who are protected anyway?
I beg your pardon, Doctor.
Let's get the
That is not true.
let's get the question. Let's get the question. Let's get the question.
Good morning. My name is Yamkela Mehlomakulu. I'm Chief Director for Financial Systems at Treasury. There's something very interesting that is happening, and that is very true in a sense, and it's actually very valid, and which I don't see insurance bodies actually tapping on it when it comes to insurance fraud. And that is when I myself am the only daughter to my father, and I've insured my father, obviously. So my father passed away in 2021, right? But there's a dozen of my cousins, of my relatives that have claimed from different insurance bodies for his death, and yet they are not directly related to him in terms of being his children. Do you understand? This is a fact, and it happens in a lot of other families as well, and it's not based on color, culture, or anything. Do you understand? Same as with businesses, right? We have in the I would say Transkei, I don't want to say Eastern Cape, a lot of businesses that would business owners that would ban their own businesses for insurance fraud, right? And has been going on for years actually, and it's ongoing. So somewhere, somehow, where insurance fraud is concerned, I'm not convinced that insurance bodies are able to calm that.
Thank you very much for that question. Regarding the first part of what you mentioned, it is quite unfortunate. Let me start firstly, a precursor is to say, we don't deal with that type of insurance. We deal mainly with commercial insurance. But I can, however, say that there is a lot of work that's being put in. I mean, AI is also playing a major role in there in helping insurers to actually detect fraudulent claims. But I mean, in the event that all of that fails, then you can always approach the relevant ombudsman. They are always there to assist with those kind of queries. So I really can't speak for the relevant bodies, but I can say that as Allianz Commercial, we have witnessed that there is some improvement. No matter how small and insignificant it may seem, there is some improvement to try and reduce insurance fraud. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, let's take another question. If there isn't any question after this one, we will give a round of applause and go for a break, tea break.
Great.
Sure. Okay, yeah, we can take as many. Let's clap now and then we'll clap again.
Right.
Please go for it.
Name is Norbert Williams. I'm the head of IT governance at one of the power utilities, the only power utility. So that will leave to you to figure out. I guess look, my question is kind of linked to the insurance fraud on the one hand. So we potentially, let me put it like this, is we get to a point where we take out insurance, right? And then they become the laissez-faire approach where we're saying, oh, we covered. So technically, you know, what we can claim. And that would be a bigger concern because, of course, with that can come potential of sabotage internally, and whether or not the kind of insurance you're speaking about covers that. Because we obviously looking at external threats that comes in. Very often we ignore the internal threat that could exist, and whether or not insurance will actually cover that, I think is a critical point. And then, of course, on the other hand of that is how do you, I want to say, respond to organizations that has now gone through the approach of saying it's the same as having vehicle insurance, right? And I know you're commercial, but if somebody drives into me, it's fine, I can go and claim. And there's an entire process, and very often we have to prove a lot more as to why an insurance company needs to pay out. And that would be one of the biggest concerns for an entity like ours as to, are we going to go through this million questions that says these are all the 10,000 reasons why we won't pay out, and there's one good reason why we might. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that question. So just to answer the first part of your question, we have specialized commercial crimes cover, which is a policy that will pretty much cover an entity for losses resulting from the actions of their employees. For instance, let's look at the company secretary. I hope there are no secretaries here who just think I keep taking jabs, you know. But however, let's look at, for instance, a company law firm secretary who's been there for over 30 years and has, over the period of 30 years, every year maybe just stealing $1 million here, and then maybe taking a break for a year and then stealing another $1 million. We do have commercial crimes, and it really happens. I mean, Lucian and them will tell you that it happens where over a period of 20 years, somebody has stolen about 50 million rand, and you think, but how did the firm miss it, you know? But it happens. And in a case like that, if you have commercial crimes cover in place, you can literally call upon us, and we will ask you a few questions, yes. And the main question in that regard is normally the point of discovery. So whilst it may be that the fraud has gone on for a certain period of time, we will ask you when you discovered it. We'll also look at your policy's retroactive date, and then based on that, we will determine what portion of that sort of loss that we can cover. The second part of your question, which is very important, and thank you for asking it, because from a claim side, we often find that people just think, oh my, you know, when I took out the cover, you know, they were very happy to sign me up, but now I've got a claim and they ask him a million questions. And I'm sorry that it seems that way. I would like to apologize on behalf of all insurers, but I do believe that we try our best to not be unreasonable in the sort of questions that we ask. Like, for instance, when you take up the cover, you'll complete and sign a proposal form. The proposal form, for instance, will tell us what kind of measures you have in place. Some companies will tell you they have a 4I principle, where when they receive an invoice or something, a number of people will actually sign it off before it actually gets to the point where the bank processes the transaction. If we get a claim, for instance, and we see that, no, X received the invoice and they did all the signing and they processed it and it went through, then we do sort of need to come back to say, but wait a minute, remember when you completed the proposal form, you said that you have XYZ measures in place. Why are we not seeing that being done? And it may seem at that point in time, because you're looking to get the payout, genuinely looking to get the payout, it may seem as though, you know, we're really just trying to frustrate the process, but it's just so that we understand and our underwriters understand the nature of the risk that we're dealing with. Because if you've said you've got XYZ in place and we receive a claim and we're seeing that XYZ is not in place, then we need to look at things such as, you know, are you a client that we respectfully, you know, want to have on our books? And if we still want to keep you on our books, what sort of things do we want to see going forward in order to prevent us having to pay claims that you had initially said we would never have to pay because your measures would be in place? I hope that answers your question. Does it?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
A round of applause for MK.